Hello and welcome to another episode of ICS Cyber Talks podcast. And today I have with me a very interesting guest, Omree Wechsler, who is a top researcher for a strategic country and in the, well, Omree, you should said it. So welcome.
Thank you. Okay, if I'm supposed to define what I do, basically I'm a researcher and in the Blavatnik Interdisciplinary Cyber Research Center in Tel Aviv University, and at the Yuval Neeman Workshop for Science, Technology and Security, which is a national security think tank, both in Tel Aviv University. Outside than that, I'm also a threat intelligence analyst in Cognite, although whatever I'm going to say today, I represent only myself and my research. You always have to remain legal department's best friend,
No problem. Only for those that are watching us now, we decided to switch from Hebrew to English podcast in the last minute. So I'm a bit confused. We would do everything as needed that it would be all right. So we start always the same way. And this is a short bio. Tell us about yourself so people can understand where you are coming from. And then we would move on.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, I did to reach this world of cyber and technology and all these kind of topics, I made a different course than most would think. 7 years ago, I came back from a master's degree in Germany. In my BA and master's, I studied subjects that are unrelated to cybersecurity or technology and so on. Mostly political science, international relations, Middle Eastern studies, and so on.
Interesting.
Yes, definitely. For me, it was really interesting, but you can't really find a lot of jobs in that. And in a very random kind of way, I found a job as a research assistant at the Yuval Neeman Workshop under a professor and Major General retired Isaac Ben Israel.
The one and only.
The one and only, indeed. And from there, that's how I started. So basically, not from like any technological background and so on. And since then,
But you still deal with the most technological issues there are around right now.
Yeah, well, it's kind of one thing led to another in a way. You start reading all sorts of materials and you translate a lot of terms and keywords that you don't quite understand at the beginning. And yeah, at some point I decided I want to write an article, just using all the materials that I've collected in my work. And one article, then another one, and then you kind of fall in love in the process of learning and writing and publishing things. And, you develop, you progress, and, more opportunities arrive. And here I am.
Very well. And thank you for being here.
Thank you for hosting me.
So, we would start with the topic of AI.
Mm-hmm.
This is the big buzz right now. And in a way, my feeling. Okay, and I'm saying that it's my feeling. That a lot of people are talking about it, less understand what they're saying about it. Now, a lot of, buzzwords, and I would go to my childhood, okay? When I was a child, I was very big fan of Isaac Asimov. And I'm talking about almost 40 years ago, even more. And one of the things was, of course, all the robots issues and the 3 rules. But another thing that was over there was what he called the Frankenstein syndrome. The fear of the machine.
Mm-hmm.
And from my point of view, I have the feeling that we are over there. Because most of the talking that I'm hearing and that are around, it's the fear of the machine that would talk with the machine, and they would have a language that nobody else can understand, and one day they would kill us all. And I'm saying, well, guys, I'm not sure that this is the situation, this is where we are standing. But on the other hand, definitely we would need some regulation for this. And the question is, there was very long way that machines start thinking, okay? So we are talking about machine learning, after that the deep learning, and then artificial intelligence. So can you make some order in all those words so we can understand better, those that are watching us or listening to us? What is the difference and where we come to?
Yeah, sure. So basically, we have to make some distinctions, right? So at this point, what we have is what we call narrow AI, which basically is a subset of AI that is designed to solve specific problems or to show any sort of cognitive to do all kinds of cognitive tasks, but in a very limited way, such as image recognition, autonomous driving, and so on. In the future, not the long future, but in a couple of years or maybe decades, we will have what we will call general AI or artificial general intelligence. It has some versions to it.
Yeah.
Which basically means that machines will be able to show, basically to do all sorts of cognitive tasks, but in different, let's say, in a combined kind of way. I mean, it's not going to be limited. It's going to be more like it would be able to replace human workforce. And do more than just one specific task that it was designed to do. Some speculations talk about what's going to be in the long future, which is the artificial superintelligence, which basically means that machines will surpass human intelligence, which I speculate at some point, these machines also today, by the way, they do have areas where they do better than human beings because they're able to ingest very large quantity of data and do it fast. But in certain areas, the way this thing goes, they won't be able to replace us completely. And I'll come back to it later if you want me to expand on this. But
yeah, of course.
And then you have the other divisions as well. You talked about machine learning, which is a subset of AI, and machine learning basically is algorithms that focus on statistical models. They learn from data, from training data. And they're supposed to make decisions and predictions without being explicitly programmed to. All right? Deep learning is a subset of machine learning. And what you do, you take the algorithms of the machine learning and you layer them up. And in a way that resembles neural networks. I mean, deep learning was supposed to resemble or to imitate neural networks in the brain. And therefore, this subset of machine learning is able to conduct or to perform more complex tasks than machine learning.
The question is like that. If I would measure human against machine,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the real power of the human mind would be the innovation part. Because the innovation is something that is not really coming from learning. It's a combination of a lot of things. It can be research, it can be, you slept in the night, you had a dream, and voila. And from your researchers and other researchers that you know, can a machine be innovative?
Well, the way it's structured, I don't know. I guess that many of our listeners or viewers, whoever ever took a scientific field in university or they also teach it in social sciences. But if you've ever heard of the scientific theory that basically is focused on how we conduct science, right? So there was, I think it was 16th century or 17th century, there was Lord Francis Bacon, who said that the way to conduct science is to collect observations, and then you make a generalization out of them. It's inductive reasoning, basically. And then you deduce from this rule, this generalization that you made, in order to predict or identify what's going to happen the next time this event or observation occurs. And then at some point, well, in the 20th century came the philosopher Karl Popper, who basically said that you cannot, what you have to do is that you have to falsify hypotheses in order to maintain them. I mean, to keep them relevant in a way.
Okay.
And that's exactly the thing with AI. AI uses inductive reasoning in a way, automated inductive reasoning. And for that part, it is based on data, whether it is structured or supervised learning or unsupervised learning. It is based on data. So basically, even if it finds a pattern or makes a prediction that you're not familiar with, it is still based on training data at some point or another. Therefore, in terms of imagination, I think that's something that the machine will always lack. That's at least my way of thinking that.
It's making a lot of sense. Now, let's jump into cyber.
Yes.
So, what is between AI and cyber? Because we have a lot of things that are said around. First of all, did we open a Pandora box? Because, everybody is talking about the future, and in the future the cyber would be machine against machine. Human don't have what really to do over there, which, again, I'm a bit skeptic about it. But where are we and where we are going to?
Well, I guess that most of the stuff we have now is speculations and predictions of ourselves, basically saying, okay, if AI will automate everything, why shouldn't it be able to automate the conduct of cyber attacks, right? And with all sorts of new services now, such as ChatGPT and so on, many people started thinking, okay, maybe we're here, as you said. Now, I see it in a different way. ChatGPT is going to enable some things. It already enables sort of things. For example, in terms of phishing attacks. So you can, if English is not your native language, you can use ChatGPT in order to form a very convincing sort of text that will be used in a phishing attack. But that's not. I know that phishing attacks comprise most of the cyber attacks today. I mean, as the initial attack vector.
Yeah.
But it's not quite in the realm of cyber as it is in social engineering. In a way, it's like hacking the human being, the basically convincing you to open an email, an SMS, a file, to download something. So that's it. But in the future, who knows? Most of the stuff we know is from things that were developed in labs as a POC, as basically a proof of concept, such as IBM in 2018, where they came up with, I think it was called DeepLocker. It was a malware that based on machine learning that they've embedded in a video conferencing software and could have identified targets via facial recognition. So these things we've only seen in labs so far, but I guess at some point it will happen,
It was about, I believe, 2 years ago that every startup was, about 5 years ago, every startup was adding the word cyber to his resume or to his name for gathering money from investors. Okay? 2 years ago, they started with the AI. So it was cyber and AI. A lot of time they don't really know to explain what is the AI in the game. And I'm sorry for those that do know, so please forgive me up front. But we were using the AI words, we were using the neuron network that was the training network for AI. And when the ChatGPT came out, it was opening for all of those that are not only professionals. It's like it was another add-on. I'm saying all the time that my phone is one of my add-ons. I don't remember anymore phone numbers. A lot of times I don't remember even names because this is one of my problems. I recognize faces, less names. But when I have my add-on, which is the smartphone, then I have everything. So Google become part of me, really.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question is, and the GPT right now looks like it's another add-on that I am getting. What I am not sure, and this is because I was trying that for a couple of times, is that my feeling is that if there is all the data, the answer would be correct. There is a lot of issue even with the way that you are asking the question.
Exactly.
Because if you're not asking it right in the right way, you would get a lot of bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And we already read about articles about answers that had nothing with reality. Okay, that people were trying. Now, this is when it went out to the public. Okay. Now, we can't take it back, probably, because it's out. I know that a lot of people are using that mostly for writing, which is okay. It's fine. And we came to the point that I'm hearing about a lot of developers that are trying to write code through the GPT.
Yes.
Now, this is a big risk. Can you explain what is the risk in it?
Look, well, I guess you said it yourself. If it produces inaccurate results or invents things that, that do not exist, then of course, you're going to base your software on something that was written by a software that, sometimes may produce inaccurate products. That's a risk indeed. I think that also another thing is that people thought also with software development, but also with cyber, which basically at some point, you do have software development also in this field.
Yeah, of course.
That it's going to open the door for many other people, less technical, less abled, people that, well, not abled is not the right word, maybe, but people that are not good programmers or maybe have no idea in programming and so on, and will enable them to write all sorts of programs, also malware in certain cases and so on. But I can say that from a personal, well, it wasn't me, but a colleague of mine, for example, who tried and has experience in that. And we tried to write a malware just as an experiment,
yeah,
right?
Of course.
And you have to be very specific. First of all, you have to be very specific in the way you ask it, because ethically, the algorithm, the machine will tell you like, I cannot. It's not ethical. But also, when you order the ChatGPT to write it, you have to be very specific with what you want in terms of the code itself, like the abilities and so on. So I think that thing was a bit exaggerated in a way that, I mean, the whole thinking that it's going to, let's say, the democratization of malware creation, right? Because you still need a lot of knowledge and experience in order to tell the machine exactly what you want. So for now, I think this risk was exaggerated. But then, with everything, you start slow and, you increase the pace. So same thing is going to be with AI. Same thing you said about inaccurate results. Yesterday I thought about it and I kind of thought of AI and compared it like, with at the beginning of the 20th century with aircrafts. People said, oh, this thing keeps on crashing all the time. It's never going to be of use, And all of a sudden, after some years, Yeah. So we'll develop from here, I'm sure.
I'm looking at that, I'm going to the past. Let's say the open source.
Yes.
Okay, and why I'm comparing it, it's because at the beginning, everybody was using the open source. It took quite time until the licensing issue came out, and as you probably know, there are hundreds of licenses, different licenses for open source. And probably it would happen here also, because if the training of the AI is on public domain, it might be that it would take code parts of someone else, which it might be proprietary, or it can be GitHub or something like this, and is bringing it in, and you don't really know where he took it from. So it might be that you would find yourself that you need to pay royalties to someone because it's his code. It's not your code. It's the GPT brought it from somewhere. It doesn't invent it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where does it put it? Where does it put us with that? Do we have any way today to make sure that we're not using something which is a propriety of someone else? Sorry that I'm bringing you into this issue, but it's very interesting for me.
Yeah, well, with that regard, it's a good question. It's indeed a good question. I'm not quite sure of all the mechanisms that are used in order to prevent that from happening. But in this case, I'm sure that, they're going to come up with some solution, because when it comes to legal terms and legal issues, then at some point,
And money.
And money, exactly. Especially money. I'm sure they'll come up with a solution, but I think that also, here we can see the convergence of the risks that we already know with open source. So, for example, what happens if you ask any sort of an AI with ChatGPT, the public version at least, the database is already closed. It's like up until 2021, if I'm not mistaken. But with other ones that may be open to the internet, what prevents it? You talked about proprietary code and so on, but what prevents it from bringing in some code with some malicious lines inside that someone uploaded, some malicious threat actor uploaded some malicious code to GitHub or so on, and now the AI brings it to you,
I see in the professional groups of cyber a lot of talking exactly about that. Like, okay, we closed for everybody in the company the way of using the GPT. Okay, because again, we are afraid that a malware or any malicious would come through that and into our network, and it would be because it's from someone which is not working inside the company. So probably it would be easier to this malicious to go in and then spread. Of course, in the end of the day, this is what the attacker wants to get inside and then start to spread, hold as many assets as he can, and only then go out. And what is the recommendation from your point of view right now to allow people in the organization work with the GPT or not?
I think
cyber view, of course.
Yeah, I think each organization with their own risk appetite. Some organizations, startups and so on, it could be that they can allow themselves to take more risks. They're not holding a lot of, say, personal information or critical information and so on. Again, it's a matter of risk analysis, I think. It really depends.
So, because you're belong to the place that is looking on the state strategy, country strategy of cyber, either attack or defense, do you already see, let's say, in the war of Russia and Ukraine and others, that they are using already AI inside, either for defense or for attack? In country level?
Yeah. Not quite. I mean, the examples are very scarce. There was one interesting case where I think 3 weeks ago, perhaps, there was a deepfake video of Putin declaring martial law in basically, well, someone apparently hacked into a TV channel in Russia. It's called the Mir channel. It's a news channel that works in Russia and other post-Soviet countries. And they've broadcasted a deep fake of Putin, saying that some Ukrainian militias invaded Western Russia, the Belgorod area and so on, and that he has to declare martial law and a general recruitment to the army. And of course, that was deep fake made by AI. I can only imagine, I can only guess who's standing behind it, right?
Yeah, of course.
So in that sense, yes, we've seen some. Also, there was also a deep fake of Zelensky, I think a year ago, or at the beginning of the invasion, where there was a deep fake of him calling the Ukrainian military to surrender and so on. So in that sense, we do see it, but for all the other stuff that we've spoken about, it is yet to be seen. At least from what I know, the thing is that we only know like a little fraction of whatever is happening.
Yeah, of course. Let's jump into other issue, other subject.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that this is something that you deal with quite a lot, and this is space.
Yes.
Cyber in space for me, it's a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And usually we are talking all the time about networks on Earth, inside factories, in other places. Less we understand about the idea of what can be done in space. Okay, we know that today satellites are having a huge transform of data, especially in communication. And probably, as everything else, it's another target. So, what are the targets that we are looking at space from hacker point of view? Attacks. What they are looking to get from those attacks?
So, first of all, let me start by talking about why the space sector is so special in terms of other sector. Comparing to other sectors.
Yeah, put us into the zone.
Exactly.
Good.
So basically, the space sector started as a more governmental, military sector. Governments used to build their own satellites. They were used to invest the most money in it. Up until the 90s, I think all of the money. And at some point, first of all, some technologies that were originally created for military use, such as navigation, the GNSS, and the internet, basically became civilized, more.
Yeah.
And with the development of computing and IT technology, of course, more and more businesses realized, hey, there's an opportunity here. We can use these things for many commercial services. And the whole sector went through a very accelerated commercialization. And basically because, and by the way, government and militaries are still using satellites for various of tasks. And because of that, the satellites are still, let's say it like that, they're a prime target for espionage. One, because, of course, classified information, intelligence services, military and government, and so on. And second of all, because now with more satellite communication coming in, it becomes yet another source of targeting, just for getting data that telecommunication companies produce and so on. Other things when we look at navigation services, GNSS, we see more. It's less espionage, but more say disturbance and of services, of navigation services. We see it mostly around war and conflict zones. So, for example, in Syria, there's a constant jamming or spoofing. I wouldn't say attacks because it's constantly happening, right?
Yeah.
Around Russia and Ukraine, obviously. So, yes, espionage, disturbance of services. Of course, each service and what they produce, and each have their own reason why they're so lucrative for attackers.
We saw attacks on satellites in the Ukraine-Russia war. When we talked before this podcast, you were talking about VSAT. Can you give us some examples to understand better what was the attack and how it influenced?
Yes. Well, Viasat is an American satellite communication company. And on the day that the Russian military, the Russian army invaded Ukraine, of course, they targeted government agencies and banks and so on. And what they tried with the Viasat attack is to paralyze or to disturb or shut down satellite communication to the Ukrainian military. So what they did, at least according to the reports that I read, is that it was pretty sophisticated, because at the beginning, everyone thought that it was a jamming attack, that they've overrun the signal transmission that goes to the satellite by producing a stronger signal and overrunning it. But then they realized that the ground terminals that are used to by the very users, that's part of the user segment, what we call it, and it's used to communicate or to by the users to send data to the satellite and receive data from the satellite, and these ones were inoperable. And what investigators realized at some point is that these Russian attackers used a vulnerability in a VPN service. If I'm not mistaken, it was a Fortinet. Don't tell Hillel that I mentioned his company in a bad.
No, it's okay.
In a bad sense. So they used the VPN vulnerability to access a server that belongs to Eutelsat. It's a subsidiary of Viasat. And then they sent a wiper malware to all these ground terminals and basically wiped them off, which kind of shows sophistication. Then, of course, Ukraine turned up to SpaceX and asked Elon Musk to help, and he sent ground terminals of Starlink, their satellite communication service, to Ukraine. And also Starlink, well, they tried to hack Starlink as well, but Starlink managed to fight it off. At least in my opinion, they showed some they've say there are a lot of positive lessons we can learn from the way that Starlink handled these attacks. First of all, by being able to push software updates in real time to their terminals. Then also, basically by the way their incident response team handled it in real time. And also by Elon Musk's own announcement that I choose to look at it as some sort of a commitment that Starlink will now redirect funds to invest more in the cybersecurity of the service. So that's two case studies, very, very prominent case studies that we've seen last year. It's interesting because researchers for years, I guess for the last decade perhaps, warned that at some point we will see these attacks, and there were incidents along the years, but nothing was so, let's say, widespread in terms of the way that the media reported about it. So we saw incidents, but it was kind of kept in the shadows and so on.
Yeah. And
that's yet another problem that infests the whole, say, security field of space systems. That because everything was so classified, you don't really know the full scale of the cyber attacks and cyber incidents for or in space systems.
Yeah. Well, we know that for a couple of years and maybe even a decade, as you said, there is a space war between countries. So it's China, it's the US, it's Russia. And, well, probably we are also somewhere in the middle, because we are one of the countries that are providing satellites. And it's very interesting to see that from talking about physical attack that would take out satellites from working, it's turned on into a cyber, that it's more deny of service, other than, blow up the satellite himself. And this is very interesting. It's like a very interesting change in the way that the states are thinking. I don't know if it's for good or for bad, but it's a change. Now, does only states attack satellites, or did we see already the crime syndicate of cyber that is trying to do that, private groups that are trying to do that? Are there any evidence for that?
So I'll start from I'll divide the question, the answer, into two parts. First of all, in terms of the trends, I cannot say that we see a space war per se. We do see two terms that people usually use interchangeably, and I think we should distinguish between them. One is the militarization of space. Basically, it concerns of the use of space systems for military purposes. And that's a trend that has been taking place, since Reagan. Exactly. So, well, even before.
Okay.
Reconnaissance satellites, military satellite communications, remote
laser
sensing.
Satellites that would have the beam to attack the Earth.
Oh no, these ones are part of the other the other trend. So the one is the militarization of space.
Okay.
The other one is the weaponization of space.
Okay. And now I understand that where you divided things. Okay.
Exactly. Fine. And the weaponization of space basically is it's focused on developing and introducing capabilities to target satellites and other space assets, or mounting weapons on them, such as, the laser that destroys the Earth and so on. And in the last couple of years, what we've seen with the weaponization of space, it's a trend that has been going for decades, but in a fluctuating manner. So there were years where we've seen less activity in that regards. There were years that we've seen an increase in activity. And in the last couple of years, we see more and more states, amongst which are the most capable ones, that have been establishing space commands and space military units. Examples is the United States Space Force, the rearrangement of space commands, both in 2019. China has a space unit under its strategic support forces that was established in 2015. And so on. Russia, Australia, Iran, France, that's only a partial list.
Of course.
And alongside of that, you see also the use of the development and testing of more capabilities. Some of them are kinetic, such as direct ascent missiles or directed energy systems, such as microwave and lasers and so on. And of course, you can also see cyber capabilities. Now, the thing is that of course, the Russian-Ukraine war has shown us, at least if you look at the Russian cyber warfare efforts, that cyber capabilities do have their own limitations. So you have to set them up, you have to maintain them. It's not like a magic kind of capability that you press a red button and bam, someone is hacked. So I think that as long as you have, let's say, so-called peacetime or gray zone or everything that is not an ongoing conflict, you see more use of cyber capabilities because you can use them to spy, which is basically the vast majority of state-sponsored cyber activities, espionage. And it allows you a lot of deniability, the problem of attribution and so on. So in peace times or gray zone times or whatever you want to call it, you'll see more cyber capabilities in action. Whereas at war, I'm not quite sure. You'll see attempts to hack satellites, that's for sure. But given the limitations, who knows what they're going to use? With kinetic weapons, it's something else because using missiles or any capability to blow up satellites creates what we call space debris. All these little parts and shrapnels and so on that keep on
moving around
the Earth, yeah. And so it jeopardizes also the attacker's space assets. So that's another thing to think about. In November 2021, the Russians blew up their own satellites, and some shrapnels made holes in the International Space Station. Astronauts were forced to take cover and so on. So these are the dilemmas in choosing which capability to use.
Yeah.
Another thing is the movement towards using constellations of satellites in low Earth orbit. So back in the day, they used to, well, at least today, but it's a trend that basically is ongoing, that in the past they used to launch satellites to what we call the geostationary orbit, 36,000 kilometers above Earth. Nowadays, in terms of less latency and so on, they start sending satellites to low Earth orbit, like a couple of hundreds of kilometers above Earth. And when you do that, you get limited coverage because, the higher the altitude, the bigger areas of Earth the satellite can cover. So in order to compensate for that, they started launching constellations of hundreds or dozens of satellites. Now, if you blow up a satellite or you use a laser to blind the sensors and so on, it's still unlikely to take down the whole service. So you get the advantage as an operator of satellite services or a defender, whatever you want to call it, you get the advantage of redundancy. The only way, and that's not me saying, that was Derek Tournier, the director of the Space Development Agency under the US Space Force, saying that the only way to take down the whole constellation is by cyber attack. If you hack if you target the right target, such as the ground control station, of course, it has its own challenges, but
yeah, of course.
That's the way to do it. Now, to the other part of the question regarding cyber criminals, I haven't seen it yet. I've seen only one example in a Russian-speaking dark web forum. A threat actor, we will so professional way to call these people. One of the forum members offering to sell an access to Maxar Technologies satellites. Maxar is an imaging. They have imaging satellites.
Mm-hmm.
They're being used in Ukraine. I think it was Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine that said, or someone else that said, that more than 50% of their intelligence originates in these satellites. And this forum member was selling access to the satellite. He didn't say exactly how and what. I guess it was credentials for any system in the ground control for $8,000. Now, my crypto wallet is empty. I'm not willing to buy this kind of stuff. But yeah, we don't know whether it's true. We don't know whether he has the right access credentials, if it's not a scam or so on. But that's one case. I haven't seen any other yet. So for now, it is still a state kind of capability.
Very, very interesting. Actually, we came to the end.
Mm-hmm.
We are almost 1 hour in the air.
That went fast.
That's yeah. Usually, it's working this way. And for the both issues that we were talking about, the AI and the cyberspace, what would you like our listeners to take from this conversation?
I think that, if we spoke about, several technology areas that, may look unconnected, I think that it's important to understand that everything is connected and everything is going to be even more connected, in the near future. So we have to understand that in order to really know how to protect ourselves, in order to understand really what's going on, we have to have at least some sort of a basic understanding of how each and every one of these fields relate, and how these machines, in a way, work and connect and interact with each other. And that's the major one, I think.
Very good. Omree, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming to the studio. I would apologize for the beginning, at least for my side, because we really decided to go to English, something like less than a minute before we started. So I know that the other part was very well. So thank you very much. And probably we would meet again. By the way, we are now exactly 1 year from the first time that we met. It was on the Cyber Week 2022, when we talked about you coming to the podcast.
Mm-hmm. We have an anniversary.
Oh, yeah. So it's very well. And I hope that when Dr. Gil Baram is coming to Israel next month, maybe we can do something together as well. So we have some things to the future, and it's very good.
Indeed, I'd be happy from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you.